Very good morning to everyone who is present in this virtual forum now. My sincere thanks to the West Bengal branch of Association of Physicians of India for asking me to be in this forum today. And today I would like to discuss a very important topic which we are facing every day in and day out. That is the refractory cirrhotic ascites. As you all know, today cirrhosis is one of the big problem as far as morbidity and mortality is concerned, due to non-alcoholic steatohepatitis to alcoholic liver disease to B and C and everyone. And one of the complication of cirrhosis, when it becomes decompensated, or rather it is one of the early decompensated feature of cirrhosis, which can be diagnosed by anyone, is ascites. And we all clinicians at every level, from a primary health center to tertiary care center, we do treat ascites of cirrhosis. And definitely ascites of cirrhosis is the most common cause of ascites. So we do treat this condition everywhere in every hospital. But problem arises when it is refractory. And today my issue of discussion that's why is refractory cirrhotic ascites. And before that, definitely I would like to say a few words regarding decompensated cirrhosis and few words regarding management, few words regarding uncomplicated ascites, because if we know the management of uncomplicated ascites, then we can probably manage refractory ascites better. So that will be my approach today. And next slide, please. Yes. So this issue of ascitic fluid aspiration is there since 20 BC. Celsus has first described it, and even after that, Ludwig van Beethoven in 1827 received large volume paracentesis, and he died 2 days after that. So this issue of ascites and ascites-related aspiration of fluid or paracentesis is there in the history for a long time. Next, please. Now, few words regarding this multi-stage model for the clinical course of cirrhosis. That is decompensation of cirrhosis. Transition from the compensated cirrhosis to decompensation occurs in 5 to 7% per year. Decompensated is systemic disease with multi-organ and systemic disease. Just to divide it, it can be as a whole, there can be at least 5 to 6 stages of liver disease. And initial 3 stages, stage 0, stage 1 and stage 2 are basically compensated stage. Stage 3, 4 and 5 are decompensated stage, that is bleeding or fast non-bleeding decompensation like infection, ascites like that. And in the end stage, that is stage 6, there can be refractory ascites, persistent encephalopathy, infection, jaundice and other things. And definitely renal dysfunction is one of the. Next slide, please. And compensated by is asymptomatic, decompensated by most of the time. Pathophysiology is very important, but I am not going to discuss in detail. All cirrhotic patients will develop portal hypertension at some or other stage. And there are many issues that nowadays we do discuss with bacterial translocation in length. And in every forum, we do discuss that bacterial translocation probably plays an important part in the decompensation of cirrhosis. And there can be other inflammatory markers which are responsible and which ultimately leads to all the complications like adrenal dysfunction, hepatic encephalopathy, renal dysfunction, hepatorenal, and hepatopulmonary syndrome. Next slide, please. So, how to manage the decompensated cirrhosis? There are two issues. I would like to highlight only two issues. One is suppress the etiological factor, and second is target the key factor in the pathogenesis. So etiological factor, as you know, the commonest cause of cirrhosis are either alcohol, which is very common now, and we have number of studies, and we have shown that alcoholic liver disease is gradually increasing. 10, 15 years back, it had hepatitis B, and now we are getting some patients of hepatitis C because of drug addiction. That is, IV drug users are getting hepatitis C infection, and definitely non-alcoholic steatohepatitis or metabolic syndrome can be one of the cause or most important cause of liver disease. So all these things are modifiable to some extent. You can treat hepatitis B and C. You can one can stop alcohol, and definitely metabolic syndrome can be modified. So we can address the etiology and target key factors in the pathogenesis can also be addressed. Next. So treatment of the key pathogenic factors, mainly several studies have been evaluated. Important things are again targeting the microbiome abnormalities, and as I said, it is a big issue. And nowadays, people are discussing on bacterial translocation. Rifaximin is a drug which was being used very frequently, improving the disturbed circulatory function by long-term albumin therapy, treating the inflammatory state by using the statin. There are many controversies, but definitely now people are saying very categorically statins can be used in case of decompensated or even incompensated cirrhosis, targeting portal hypertension by non-selective beta blockers. Next, please. So next come our original issue of ascites. It is the most common complication of the decompensation cirrhosis. And we all, studying from a primary health center to tertiary care hospital, we can diagnose ascites. Many times it is difficult. You need to do a ultrasonography, but not always. And it is sometimes very harassing to the patient because patient has to come to the hospital very frequently. Ascites can be uncomplicated or it can be refractory. At the outset, I would love to discuss some issues on uncomplicated ascites, how to manage them. Then we'll come finally to the refractory ascites. Next, please. Uncomplicated ascites of evaluation and diagnosis. Cirrhosis is responsible for 80% of cirrhosis, as we said. It to be evaluated like any other disease history, physical examination, definitely abdominal ultrasound, laboratory assessment at the very beginning, or if necessary, patient comes frequently, probably during every visit. Some of the laboratory tests should be done. Liver function, particularly renal function. Renal function should be given due importance because if patient renal function is deteriorating, then probably we have to be very cautious that patient is becoming decompensated very fast. Serum and urine electrolytes and definitely acidic fluid uh, uh, study is very important to diagnose spontaneous bacterial peritonitis. Grading of ascites is important because you have to follow them up. Mild ascites only detectable by the ultrasound. Moderate ascites is grade 2 and grade 3 is large volume ascites. Next, please. So, how to evaluate further diagnostic paracentesis can be done, and people are doing paracentesis frequently. It is not a very difficult test. Only that sometimes you have to see the slide properly. And the neutrophil count nowadays being considered as one of the criteria for diagnosing acidic fluid, total protein, SAG, all these things can be done frequently. Next, please. So management of uncomplicated ascites, grade 1 or mild ascites, probably no specific treatment is required except the treatment of the etiology, and definitely some amount of salt restriction may be helpful. But grade 2 or moderate ascites, sometimes miss hospitalization and may not, and they should be evaluated, correct by sodium imbalance, that is dietary modification, as well as diuretic therapy. And moderate restriction of the sodium intake, that is one can take 4 to 6 or 7 gram of salt. Normally, additional salt should be avoided, or salty food should be avoided. Next slide, please. So, next is what diuretic we should give. Definitely, spironolactone is a drug of choice. everywhere. And how to start it? Initially, 100 milligram per day is to be given. After 72 hours, if you consider the further diuresis is required, then definitely you can increase the dose, and it can be increased up to 400 milligram per day every 72 hours. We can increase by 100 or 50 milligram according to the patient's condition, like sodium, potassium, or blood pressure or circulatory status. In patients who do not respond to mineralocorticoid, that is spironolactone, we can use furosemide. Some people now use amiloride, and some people now use torsemide. Furosemide can be increased up to the 160 milligram. And long-standing and recurrent ascites needs combination of two diuretic drugs. Next. In grade 3 ascites, again, large volume paracentesis is probably the best choice, along with diuretics and other things, and salt restriction. And here, the plasma volume expander, that is albumin infusion, after the paracentesis is important. 8 gram per liter is usually given after 4 to 5 hours after the paracentesis. Next, please. Prognosis of uncompleted ascites, development ascites in patients with cirrhosis associated with poor prognosis, and this is the only problem which we diagnose early, but most of the time we do not prepare the patient for liver transplantation. This patient may progress to the decompensation or in stage 3 very fast, so they should be prepared from that time for liver transplantation. Next, please. So I am coming my original issue, that is the refractory ascites. It was first described in 1950, and subsequently it has been modified. Next, please. And now International Ascites Club has defined this as ascites that cannot be mobilized, or the early recurrence of which after a large volume paracentesis cannot be satisfactorily prevented by medical therapy. It can be of two types. One is diuretic resistance, where you are giving that is 400 milligram of spironolactone and 160 milligram of furosemide. Still, ascites is remaining. Then it is diuretic resistant, and diuretic intractable is where diuretic cannot be given due to encephalopathy or due to some other reason. Next. Next, please. Okay, what are the diagnostic criteria? This earlier one, please. Earlier one. Okay, fine. So, what are the treatment duration? It should be given for, that is, patient must be on intensive diuretic therapy, spironolactone 400 milligram plus furosemide 160 milligram for at least 1 week. Salt restriction, that is 5.2 gram per day. Lack of response, that is weight reduction is less than 0.8 kg over 4 days, that is 200 milligram. Sorry, 200 milligram of weight should be lost every day for 4 days. If not, then it is important. And early ascites recurrence, that is grade 2 or grade 3 ascites within 4 weeks is also important criteria. Next. Next, please. Other criteria are drug-induced complication, that is diuretic-induced hepatic encephalopathy, diuretic-induced renal impairment, diuretic-induced hypo or hypernatremia, and hypo or hyperkalemia. If all these things are there, there is a diagnostic criteria for refractory ascites. Next, please. There are some other important points, like we should know whether the patient is taking the drug or not, but not exclude the dietary non-compliance, patient taking excess sodium or not, exclude the use of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, and incapacitating muscle tone. These are the additional criteria for refractory ascites. Next, please. For diagnosis, it is not very difficult, because this clinical criteria are important for diagnosis, and other evaluation should be done, like uncomplicated ascites. Next, please. So, treatment algorithm of a refractory ascites. Once you know you are dealing with a patient of refractory ascites, what to do? Refractory ascites, large volume paracentesis plus albumin, that is 8 milligram per liter of fluid. You can take out large amount of fluid, even more than 5 liter of fluid. Dietary sodium restriction plus diuretic to be continued. But here one should be very cautious that once you are taking out lot of fluid, in giving diuretic, you may reduce the dose of diuretic so that there is no circulatory failure. And if even after that there is ascites reaccumulation, you have got 2-3 options. One is consider tips, continue large volume paracentesis with albumin as needed, and consider for liver transplant. Next, please. So large volume paracentesis, as we said, it is still probably one of the very good arm in our hand, because in all the centers we cannot, who do not have the facility of tips, and liver transplant is not that possible. So a judicious use of large volume paracentesis with, if possible, if patient can afford, then with albumin therapy probably is a good option for treating refractory ascites. Next, please. Tips definitely is one of the very good method, and earlier there was many controversies even in European Association of Studies on Liver in 2014. They have said that probably tips should not be used. Tap or tapping they preferred, but in 2018 they again said no, tips is better than, because we have got better methodology. Our skill has improved. So tips, if available, is a good method for in decompensated portal system or portal hypertension. And there can be short term and long term benefit. And long term benefit is more than the large volume paracentesis. Next, please. So this is a method of tips. This is here one stent is used from the hepatic vein to the portal system, and it works for a long time and complications are less. Next, please. Contraindication of tips. When it should not be used. One is age more than 70 years. If serum bilirubin is more than 50 micromole per liter, platelet count is less than 75,000, liver disease MELD score is more than 18, current hepatic encephalopathy, active infection, hepatorenal syndrome, and CPD score more than 11, then this patient should not go for tips. There can be complications. There can be hepatorenal syndrome or hepatic encephalopathy. Next, please. Finally, as we all know now, in our country also, there are many centers for liver transplantation. People are gradually going for liver transplantation, and our initial learning curve has also changed a lot. Our result is quite good now in most of the centers. In northern India, they are most of the time they are asking for the related donors, but in southern India, there is a big shift. Their deceased donor liver transplantation is taking place. So liver transplantation should be thought in a decompensated chronic liver disease patient as early as possible, so they can prepare themselves financially, physically, and otherwise. Next, please. Next, please. So other things, all patients cannot go for liver transplantation. All patients cannot go for tips, and result of large volume paracentesis may not be good. So other drug like midodrine, though it is costly, can be tried. Result is not bad. It is 2.5 milligram twice or thrice daily, and we are using and we are getting good result. Automated low flow ascites pumps are available in some of the hospitals. It is not bad. I have complication rate is less. Peritoneal venous shunt is not being used nowadays. Intermittent albumin therapy, some people are trying giving albumin therapy. Usually 1 kg per 1 milligram per kg every 7 or 10 or 15 days, and according to the patient's situation, and result is not bad. Long-term oral antibiotic therapy like norfloxacin 400 milligram daily for long time. Low dose non-selective beta blocker like propranolol. Now again, people are not liking carvedilol due to many reasons. Repeated large volume paracentesis can be done. Nutritional therapy and correction of sarcopenia, including BCA, low grade exercise, and V2 receptor antagonists like cetabaptine, and tolvaptan. Last slide, please. Next. So finally, I would like to say that refractory ascites is an end-stage complication of decompensatory liver disease. Only definitive therapy is liver transplantation. But every patient may not afford liver transplant for physical, financial, logistic, or associated complication. Long-term conservative or palliative therapy is also not cost-effective many a time. Like say, albumin is around 4,000 to 5,000 rupees per 100 ml. So judicious use of drugs and lifestyle change can improve morbidity and mortality. Thank you very much. Last word. Thank you, sir.